the whole rubber dinghy invasion is providing one opportunity after another for really high quality misdirection by the entire political class, and it's working. It's creating a lot of steam, taking our attention away from the much larger figure, at least 20 times larger, and that is the volume of legal migration. So I'd like to start with that. Now, this is the Office for National Statistics. What I should say, I'm going to look at a few sources here because the numbers for legal migration to the UK are actually really hard to nail down. So what I thought I'd do is give you the three main sources that I found that at least paint a reasonably good picture. And the first one is the Office for National Statistics. I think they probably contain some reasonably good nerds. They're not as bent as the Home Office. So now what they say in their Now this is their long-term international migration provisional year ending June 2022, so up to about 9 months ago. So it's out of date. It's and some of these figures are doubling every year, so it's they could be seriously out of date. But that's what they say. Now the main points I want to look at you can look at this yourself, but these have all contributed towards relatively high levels of total long-term immigration, and long-term, that basically means coming to live here, at an estimated 1.1 million in the 12 months to June 2022. The estimated 435,000 increase in total immigration compared with the year earlier was driven by non-EU nationals, up 379,000 to 704,000 in the year ending June 2022. So it more than doubled for non-EU nationals. If you just take non-EU nationals, that's a bit over 1%. That is one hell of a rate of increase. The next one I want to look at is this article from Migration Watch. I find Migration Watch actually pretty good. I'm sure they're dismissed. People watching this will say, oh, you take your figures from Migration Watch. They're a bunch of fascists. You must be wrong if you even look at their website. I actually find them very nerdy, and they seem to focus not on ethnicity or the origin of immigration so much as just pure numbers, net migration. Is this country getting too crowded? Are there too many bums on seats? That's basically what they look at. I find them, if anything, too mild, moderate, and detail oriented, with their sort of nose in a stats book. But as far as they go, they're good for stats. And what they say is immigration rises to 1.3 million visa grants for foreigners to live here, double in 3 years. That 3 years thing, that is because all of these numbers are compared with 2019, because that's the last year before the COVID lockdown, and the numbers went haywire up and down during the COVID crisis, mainly down apart from illegal immigration. The number of visa grants for people to come and live in the UK has more than doubled from over 500,000 in 2019 before COVID to 1.3 million in 2022. And that doesn't include 50,000 people who were caught attempting to enter the UK illegally in just the past year. Okay, so that's the Office for National Statistics put the total number at 1.1 million. Migration Watch put it at 1.3 million. Now this next one, this is the Home Office itself, that's gov.uk, and this is Immigration System Statistics year ending December 2022, so that's more up to date. And what that says under this this heading, how many people come to the UK each year, including visitors. So, I mean, by my rough old maths, what they're saying is there were 2,836,490 visas granted in 2022, and they break that down into visitors and others. I assume people who are not visitors are people who are more permanent. So they say 49% were to visit, 22% were under study routes, 15% were under work routes, 3% for family reasons, and 11% for other reasons. And I make that basically adds up to 100%, all those numbers. So 51%, by again, rough and dirty, 51% were long-term visas. So 51% of 2.836 million, that comes to about 1.45 million. So visas for what would seem to me to be a long stay. And if you then go to the Home Office's stats, this is for year ending December 2019. So again, the last year before before COVID. What you see there is, hold on, let me just get the number. Bear with me just a moment. Here, how many people came to the UK each year, including visitors? There were 3.2 million visas granted in 2019, a 10% increase compared to the previous year, continuing with the upward trend seen over the last decade. Of these, over 3/4 were 76% were to visit, 9% were to study, 6% to work, and 2% for family reasons. But by my maths, there's an 8% unaccounted for. So it's either 24% that were long term, or it was 17%. So sorry, that would leave. Hold on, no, that would mean. Sorry, 7% unaccounted for. So either 24% or 17%. Let's take the 24% now. 24% of 3.2 million. That works out to be a bit under between 750,000 and 800,000. So if in 2022 it was over 1.4 million, and in 2019 it was about 750 to 800,000. That's almost doubling in that period, as against the last year when there was reliable, measurable data, or data that represented a trend. Okay, so that data is obscure. I think it's deliberately obscure. It's the only way to get accurate figures from that would be to trawl through the spreadsheets, maybe make a couple of phone calls to the Home Office researchers saying, what does this category mean? What does that category mean? And then put them into a yes, no, three yes, no, maybe columns, and then add them up, and you'll still come up with a rough figure. Well, the maybe column, say half of that is yes and half of that is no. I think that would be the only way to get it. People are not going. I don't have time to do that. The public don't have time to do that. So people are not looking at that. People are looking at the rubber dinghy invasion. It's much more visible, and the number is much easier to remember. 50,000 last year. I think it was about something like 46,000, but the nice round number of 50,000. People can remember that. People have no idea the level of legal immigration, which is at least, I would say, 20 to 30 times that amount. So people are focused on the rubber dinghy invasion. What is the plan that the government have in place? Well, then if I go to the next tab, that is UK to fund detention centre. This is a Sky News report. Detention centre in France. That should be in scare quotes, detention centre, under 480 million deal to stop channel crossings, etc., etc. Now, basically, the headline is the UK will give £500,000 to France, and in return, France will they'll build a detention centre. It's going to have to be a huge, great detention centre, and there'll be other things like there'll be hundreds more French personnel patrolling the beaches. Hundreds more, eh? Hundreds, well, that'll do. And then other measures, drones, aircraft and surveillance technologies, and I wonder who's going to pay for that. And 24/7 coordination centre with permanent UK liaison officers, basically so that the British police can say, are the French doing their job? And increased cooperation, that means supervision by the British, the National Crime Agency and its French counterpart. So more surveillance of the beaches and a detention centre, whatever that means. That has not been defined. The BBC says it's looking into it. Now, that detention centre, I don't believe it will be or can be a detention centre, because I don't believe that there is a crime that the French will be willing to imprison these people for. It is not a crime. France does not imprison all of its illegal immigrants. You have these huge encampments under bridges in France, or encampments outside Calais and Dunkirk, encampments all over France. They don't imprison those people. There's no reason to. I can't see what crime would be committed by an illegal migrant to France than wanting to migrate illegally from France to Britain. I don't see what French crime is committed there. I don't see what the power would be, or what power they would want to arrest. Are they going to arrest all illegal immigrants to France? I doubt it. Are they then going to arrest all illegal immigrants to France who then want to go to Britain illegally? I can't see them having the power to do that. If they do that, it's going to have to be a huge centre. I suspect even if it is called a detention centre, it will be somewhere that people can go in and out of. It'll be more like one big migrant hotel. And what about the people? Where will it be? What about the people who live near there? Supposing you dump it somewhere in Normandy, and what about the people who live in the 5 towns nearest to that huge great detention centre? What if it has 200,000, 250,000 people in it because the conditions are nicer? You can get a bed and a free meal. It's nicer than camping out in a makeshift under a tarpaulin in Dunkirk in the middle of winter. The only way that it might work is if the British government, and this might be part of their plan, I'm not sure about this. I think they're probably intending a little bit of this, will be if the British government say, get to one of these, this detention centre, one of these detention centres, we have a consul building there, it is full of British staff, we will process your claim, we will be really generous in deciding it. It will get decided much more generously than it would have previously if you got to the UK. It's a free route to citizenship. You're pretty much guaranteed to get a passport, so come to one of those detention centres and then we will fly you to the UK with your new UK passport in your hand, and we will christen it legal immigration. That is the way you will be able to attract people to it. At the moment, if I was an invader, I would want to set foot on British soil, because I think to myself, it's going to take them a decade. There'll be loads of I'll just put in loads of appeals, and by the time they get around to me, it'll be much easier just to let me stay. I will have been there for 10 years. Working on the black market anyway. I'll have picked up some language. I'll persuade them that I'm not going to be a lot of trouble, and 90% of people from my country get to stay anyway. So I wouldn't have any trouble with this. I'd get to the UK. It wouldn't stop me jumping on a rubber dinghy. So I query how these detention centres are going to work. I don't think they're going to be like jails with people under lock and key, particularly given the numbers of illegal migrants to France and illegal migrants who want to go from France to Britain. And the corollary, I think, is fate. What the British government are saying is that if you get to Britain and claim asylum, no, you won't be able to claim it. That's it. Or there'll be a cap. So once that number is reached, then no, we won't even consider you. Tough, get out, go away. We don't care if all your fingernails are being ripped out. You are not coming in. You're going back. Well, yeah. Is that the question? Is can they do that? The question is that legal? Because they're not proposing to get out of the European Convention on Human Rights or the UN Refugee Convention. Now, and there's this article from Sky. This is relevant. I don't respect the European Convention on Human Rights. I think we should leave it, but the government do. They are part of that club. It is a politicians' club. The European Convention is part of the club. If I show you this. Now, that's about the Council of Europe. I'm digressing a bit here, but the Council of Europe is the body behind the European Convention on of human rights, and that's the Council of Europe. It's not part of the EU, although you'd be mistaken. Look at the flag; that's the EU flag, or something very similar. And but it is independent from the EU, but it's very closely psychologically aligned with the EU, which we left. But its main statutory body is a committee of ministers, and there are two statutory bodies. One is the Committee of Ministers, which I think is the main one, and that comprises the foreign ministers, basically the heads of state of each member state, and then and then the Parliamentary Assembly, which is MPs from the different countries. But basically, it's run by, as the EU is, as all these international bodies are, they are run by. This is an important point to realise. These international bodies, they are run by the heads of state, the prime ministers and presidents of all those countries, getting together, having a party, being in a fancy hotel, and then legislating for you behind your back. They like each other, they don't like you. They share their interests, with each other. Their interests are hostile to your interests. So they get together and they say, well, I want to shaft my population by enacting this, by having more immigration from this country. And someone else will say, I want to shaft my population by taxing them on this. And they get together and they do a deal, and it's very easy. There's no accountability, there's no public debate, there's no discussion. And then when it all goes wrong, they can say it's nothing to do with me, that was the Council of Europe that did it, or that was the EU that did it, or that was the UN that did it. That's why they love these international organisations, because they get to deal with people they like, with whom they share their interests, and they get to shaft you behind closed doors in a way that they're not accountable for. And that is the purpose of the Council of Europe. That's the organisation from which the European Convention on Human Rights emanates. Okay, so let me just, sorry if I just deal with that, is that, and the idea that you can cap refugee claims is just nonsense. You can't do that under the European Convention on Human Rights or under the UN Refugee Convention. If you stop allowing any more asylum or refugee claims, you don't have a European Convention on Human Rights. You don't have a UN Refugee Convention. So I want to look at this article: is the government's new illegal migration bill legal? And if you go down a bit, there's the main point they make here rightly is that all legislation in the UK must be compatible with the rights guaranteed under the European Convention on Human Rights, and that is because of the European Convention on Human Rights, but also under the Human Rights Act of 1998. I'll look at that a little bit in a minute. It's a little ambiguous, but basically they can't do that. They can't simply say, right, that's it, no one else is claiming. Past a certain number, we are going to cancel the right to asylum in our country, because it will be contrary to the convention which the UK has signed up to. It will be contrary to the Human Rights Act, which was enacted subsequent to our signing up to the European Convention on Human Rights. And there's there's a contribution from this fellow Joshua Rosenberg. He was the BBC's legal correspondent. I find him pretty good at dealing with the detail of the law. He tends to be pretty accurate. I certainly don't agree with him. I don't like his conclusions, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, just on the question of whether he is right. And what he says is that that cap, saying, right, that's it, it doesn't matter if you've had your eyes gouged out, yeah, we're not considering you for refugee status. He says that, well, yes, that this could be a breach of Article 34 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which allows individuals to bring a case against a government at a court in Strasbourg if they haven't received proper redress in that country. And he wrote, Article 34 is a treaty obligation, yep, and Parliament cannot relieve the government of its duties to comply with international agreements. And that's the case. That's my point. If the UK were to say, we're not taking any refugees past a certain number, it is effectively saying, get stuffed with your Convention on Human Rights, get stuffed with your UN Refugee Convention. We're just tearing the whole thing up. It's not a derogation. And the basic mechanism under Article 34 says that the court may receive, that's the European Court of Human Rights, may receive applications from any person, non-governmental organisation, group or individual claiming to be the victim of a violation by one of the countries. So if one of these rubber dinghy invaders comes here, says, I want refugee status, and the British government says, no, you're outside our quota, he then brings a case in the European Court of Human Rights. and then the enforcement mechanism is under Article 46. Basically, the committee of under the European Convention, they get together and they decide if the UK is in breach and if its legislation is in breach, and the UK gets ostracised, and Sunak and Braverman, they are outside the club. They don't want that. The UK legislation is the Human Rights Act of 1998. And if I go through, so briefly, interpretation of the legislation, that basically means that, well, so far as is possible to do so, primary legislation and subordinate legislation must be read and given effect in a way which is compatible with the Convention rights. So what that means is, if a court if there's a rubber dinghy migrant and he's saying, listen, I want to claim refugee status, and the government is saying he's outside the quota, the court has to strain itself to interpret whatever legislation is in place in order to give him his rights under the European Convention, i.e. to give him asylum. And that's under Article 6. It is unlawful for a public authority to act in a way which is incompatible with the Convention right. So that says it's unlawful. However, that doesn't apply if, as a result of one or more provisions of primary legislation, the authority could not have acted differently. So the UK government is going to have to enact really blunt, stark, aggressive legislation that basically says European Convention on Human Rights, go to hell under any circumstances. I don't think they're prepared to do it. I don't think it will do it. Otherwise, the judge has to look at it and say, is there a way through? Could they possibly have acted differently? Can I find a gap in the legislation? He's under a duty to do that under UK law, let alone under the convention which the UK has signed up to, which does have persuasive force in a British court. It's not, it doesn't have the same legislative force, but it has persuasive force. So if you, hold on, and then when you go to Article 7, proceedings, that says that anyone who claims that a public authority has acted for purposes or purposes to act in a way which is made unlawful by the previous section may bring proceedings against the authority under this Act in the appropriate court. So they can bring proceedings in a UK court. So again, under this proposed migrant cap, the litigation queue will go back, I think, for the best part of a decade. I don't think it will work. My cynical guess is that it is not intended to work. My guess is that the intention is to, what they're doing here is jumping on the opportunity to create a lot of hot air, a lot of steam, a lot of distraction. This is misdirection. So whilst you are looking at this, and there's a battle in the courts about this migrant who's claiming asylum status and this cap on the number of refugees, you will not be looking at the numbers that I went through earlier, the numbers of legal migrants to this country during that year or the previous year. And that's the purpose. And the more you get a conflict between British legislation and the European Convention on Human Rights, the more the government can milk that, the more they can make pantomime, what I call a Punch and Judy show out of that, the easier it is to distract the likes of you and me. So that's the European Convention on Human Rights. What about the UN Refugee Convention? Well, that's kind of thought of as soft law or a palliative measure. I'm not so sure. This is from the House of Commons, Article 31 of the Refugee Convention. Hold on, bear with me a sec. There, the relationship between the Refugee Convention and UK asylum law. So if I go through this paragraph, refugees cannot directly enforce their rights under the convention. This is the UN Refugee Convention in the UK. It hasn't been fully incorporated into domestic law, but the UK's asylum process is closely assimilated to the convention, and some of the Convention's provisions are reflected in the UK's immigration rules. Section 2 of the Asylum and Immigration Appeals Act 1993 provides that nothing in the immigration rules shall lay down any practice which would be contrary to the Convention. So this legislation that Braverman and Sunak are saying they're going to put through, capping the number of refugee claims, that's going to have to repeal Section 2 of the Asylum and Immigration and Appeals Act, and it's going to have to tell the UN to go and get stuffed as well, or the UN Refugee Convention to go and get stuffed, because that is the central, the absolutely central aspect, the bottom line, the top line and the bottom line of the UN Refugee Convention is the principle of non-refoulement, non-return. And they're just going to have to trash that. They might as well just leave it. That's what they should do. The reason they won't is because going to war, or pretending to go to war with the UN Convention, makes them look tough. It creates steam, it creates misdirection. That's what they want. Okay, so what about the practicalities? There's what the border staff say about it. Ask the people on the ground what's really happening. So often, if you want to know how shoplifting is prosecuted, ask a cop, ask a store detective. They'll give you a much better idea than some MP or some draftsman, in Parliament or in Whitehall. So small boats crossing the Channel, what Border Force staff are seeing on the UK's beaches. Now, this lady here, that's Lucy Morton. She's the professional officer of the Union for Border Customs and Immigration Staff. What she says down here is, and these are her words actually, this is her writing this, as with the Migration and Borders Bill before it, so this attempt to cap refugee numbers has been tried before. I haven't studied it, I don't know how what the detail of that was. There's so many gaps in the illegal migration bill, that's a proposed new bill. Yes, we can detain people for 28 days, but where else are we going to put them? Where do we send them to? Rwanda will only take a few hundred, apparently, according to this lady. I reckon she probably has a pretty good idea. So Rwanda will only take a few hundred. 45,000 people in small boats came over the Channel last year. I thought it was 46,000. We're expecting the same sort of number this year. Where do we put that many people? So yeah, what she's saying is it's just not going to work. You're going to have too many people to deal with. And then ultimately, wrongly and horrifying, this is a business to criminals, yes. They want to get as many people at the highest possible cost across the Channel. They will use anything that we give them to do that. So then we say this is all going to end. All that will do is fuel, in the short term, the crossings. So if you say, we're going to bring this to an end, then the smugglers are going to say, get in quick, give us your money quick, you need to get in before this new legislation comes in. I think really what she's saying is it can't work, because you get all these people, you can send a few hundred to Rwanda. What do you do with the rest of them? France isn't going to take them back. France has said we won't take them back. We don't have the power to take them back. If you want an agreement with us to return people to France, to return invaders to France, you're going to have to negotiate that with the EU. Yeah, and good luck doing that. So there won't be any law of return. Okay. Now, the next one, this is a report, this is a Sky News report, which I'd like to look at. It just shows, it's from August 2021, but it shows the French cops who are patrolling the beaches and what they're doing, and I think it's quite revealing. I don't think that their powers will have changed much since then, but I'll play this.
Many on the UK side have accused the French of not doing enough to stop migrants and asylum seekers crossing the Channel. But once people are actually in boats and out at sea, the objective of the police is simply to preserve life, even if that means trailing, some would say escorting boats towards UK waters. The French insist they have no legal right to turn boats back. They can only offer help if needed, a position which has infuriated ministers in Britain and led many to question why the UK government is funding these operations at all.
Se positionnent, voyez, dans la bande de 300 mètres pour surveiller le littoral et le cas échéant, ils sont en mesure avec ce bateau-là de faire du secours. En mer, on ne fait que du secours et du sauvetage. On ne fait pas de digue en mer. On ne fait pas de lutte contre l'immigration irrégulière et clandestine en mer. On fait du secours et du sauvetage. On est là pour sauver les gens et empêcher qu'il y ait des accidents.
Okay, so what the French guy was saying there is we're there just to, as a relief organisation, to prevent these migrants from hurting themselves, to prevent them from drowning. We don't have the power to prevent illegal immigration to the UK. We are French cops. Our job is just to stop people getting into boats which they might drown in. So I think that would be analogous to a cop having the power to stop you getting into a car with me if I'm roaring drunk. And that would seem to me to be the case. I don't know what power the French have. France, what is their legal power to prevent people leaving France, particularly people who are probably in France illegally? I would have thought that's something that French law encourages. I can't see that they have a power because the person might leave France legally but end up in Britain illegally. Well, I don't think that's a crime on French soil, something that French police can get into boats and go and arrest people for. So it seems to me that their power to turn people back, their power to slash the boats, is to protect people or to prevent smugglers from putting the invaders into danger. And I don't know how that is going to change. And if that's the case, I mean, are we going to ask France to enforce UK law on French soil, in French waters, and take these people back and put them into, and make several of their towns ungovernable with this huge migrant hotel or supposed detention centre? I don't think France isn't going to do that for £500 million. I don't think that's going to work. The only way it might work, well, there are two things about this. The way that it might work is if Britain says, listen, get to this migrant hotel, there's a consul there, and he will take you through a really easy questionnaire. You're almost guaranteed to get the right to travel onto the UK legally, and that way you don't have to get into the rubber dinghies, and then we can say it's all legal, and lo and behold, no one's getting into rubber dinghies because it's not worth it. And you can guarantee that the numbers will rocket, because smugglers getting people to France will say all you have to do is get into France and then you get a free ticket to Britain. It's guaranteed. It's an even better product that we can offer you. The other thing that it offers is, you see that guy, that French cop, it offers the opportunity for really stupid, infantile French bashing. People who are politically correct and are too cowardly to be anything else love to pretend that they're not politically correct by saying rude things about the French, by making infantile remarks about the French. And the politicians know it. And these politicians will love using that by cooking up conflicts with the French and saying, aren't the French awful? Aren't they a bad lot? Which again is more steam and more misdirection. And as I said, there will need to be, I think there will need to be people in France doling out British passports to invaders. That's really, I think, the way they're going to deal with it. If they want to stop the boats coming, if they want to say, look how we have stopped these boats coming. We are men of our word. Now, if you don't believe this, look at this from Keir Starmer. Looks like a puff adder who's just eaten a small constituent. He is talking to an Iranian boy who got to the UK in a boat, and that Iranian boy is saying, you should have provided a legal route for me, ain't it awful? And here's Keir Starmer's reply. I'll play this.
It's a really good question from Marvin. As you will know, in this country we've always been very welcoming of refugees for many, many years, with different conflicts and things going on in the world, and we should have safe passages, in answer to the question, for people to get here. Going across the channel in a boat is not a safe route, and behind that there are criminal gangs that are running those routes, and so they are making money out of the misery of people who are in a desperate situation. So we need safe routes so that we don't have unsafe routes like the channel crossings, and we don't allow those gangs to exploit people, put them in that awfully dangerous situation.
Okay, you get that. It's about the poor migrants in terribly difficult situations, and that's what we have to. That's the problem we have to put right. He's talking about safe routes. Safe routes means getting a passport from France, getting a passport in France. That's what it means, and then getting a nice free airplane ticket over, and then it's all nice and legal. Incidentally, this nonsense about how we've always been welcoming to anyone and everyone from everywhere and anywhere in the world, that's nonsense. The one that's referred to is the Huguenots of the early or mid 17th century. No, we liked them because they were Protestant and we hated Catholics. So it was really the anti-Catholic feeling in the UK was really strong. So we liked French Protestants. Also, the Huguenots were really good tradesmen, really good weavers and craftsmen. They were seen as an economic benefit. We allowed them in because we thought they'd be good for us. Similarly, when Cromwell readmitted the Jews, he did it explicitly because he said it would be good for the material fortunes of the Commonwealth. Historically, it has always been the case that we don't allow people in if we think they're going to be harmful to us. We didn't allow Trotsky in for precisely that reason. Okay, so that's the practicalities. I can't see it working, but I can see it creating a lot of opportunities for misdirection. And what it will also do is create a lot of opportunities for love-ins between people who do like each other. These people like each other, they don't like you. They respect, they share each other's interests, they do not share your interests. They are hostile to your interests. There is no lie they will not tell. There is no one they will not collude with in order to degrade your interest and your sense of home. And there is no favour they will. There's no favour they will not do one another. They will do anything to scratch each other's backs. And you can see this in this this report, which I quoted from earlier. Unprecedented cooperation. It was all very lovey-dovey, hugs and kisses. There they are under the umbrella, yep, singing in the rain. The pair have forged a close bond dubbed Le Bromance. It's toe-curling stuff. There they are, patting one another on the back. Isn't that nice? That is what they want. That is what they like, and it's quite nice. You go to a really fancy hotel, you have a great knees up, and you just get together and decide how you're going to shaft your public, and there's no accountability for it afterwards. So there's a lot of opportunities for that. Expect more of that. And the other thing that there will be the opportunity for is a lot of hot air theatre, pantomime in Parliament. So let me play this from Suella Braverman. A whole lot about the British people, the good British people, the sensible British people, blah-de, all lies.
Mr. Speaker, the British people are famously a fair and patient people. But their sense of fair play has been tested beyond its limits, and they've seen the country taken for a ride. Their patience has run out. The law-abiding patriotic majority has said, enough is enough. This cannot and will not continue.
Okay, that's her. I'm not sure she cares whether you believe it. The real aim is it may be to butter you up, make you feel like she's on your side. I think it's just to create more hot air, more distraction, and the other side do just the same. So if you look at this woman, Yvette Cooper, I think she's even more obnoxious. But then I find every politician more obnoxious than the last one, no matter what order I see them in.
Enough is enough. We can't afford any more of this slogans and not solutions, just government by gimmick, ramping up the rhetoric on refugees but picking fights simply to have someone else to blame when things go wrong. This bill isn't a solution. It is a con that risks making the chaos worse. Britain deserves better than this chaos. Britain is better than this.
Again, it doesn't matter whether you believe a word of that. What matters is that you are distracted by it. So we'd better get ready for an awful lot of pantomime and distraction over this. And if you don't believe me, just look at this story that's already dominating the headlines and has taken over. Yep, Gary Lineker, he's the boss of the BBC is sorry and he's not going to do Match of the Day anymore, or Match of the Day is not going to have any commentary, bloody all over this. This is more pantomime, more of the Punch and Judy show, which is intended to distract us from that. Remember that Migration Watch article? The number of legal or visas given to people to come to live in the UK more than doubled from over 500,000 in 2019 to 1.3 million in 2022, or this number from the Home Office, which said that 2.836 million visas were granted in 2022. 51% of or only 49% of those were for visitors. I guess the implication being the rest were long term. Those are huge numbers. None of that is going to get mentioned by this lady or that lady. It is all going to be misdirection. So I hope I've said the word misdirection enough times now. This problem with the rubber dinghy migrants, it's not going to get solved because they have the politicians have every incentive to make it run and run, because it is such a good ploy. The whole problem, it will work as a distraction, because we are in a mood to be distracted. We're not keeping an eye on overall immigration data. Most of us will say, well, if it's legal, it doesn't concern me. If it's legal, it's 20 or 30 times higher than the rubber dinghy invasion. So, well, it does concern you, but we are not concerning ourselves with it. The thing that we are watching, like a mother watching her baby playing near a cliff edge, or like a cat watching a mouse hole, is our entitlements to things that we think we need in order to survive. Chiefly, overwhelmingly, free healthcare, the dole money, rent subsidy, all of these, every aspect of social insurance that we think is necessary for survival. Leaving it to the politicians to manage it, supposedly to manage the economy, so we can continue having a job. Those are the things that we are focused on. Those are the things that we all want. And because we are so focused on that, we can be distracted away from the numbers coming into this country legally by this kind of Punch and Judy show. I think it will work, and it is working at the moment. I think it will continue to work. The state is not going to reform the problems of mass immigration. It's not going to solve them by reform. The state will solve those problems through collapse. I say it again, once the state has collapsed, then people will we will meet our primal need for law privately by grouping together voluntarily. Then in those conditions of freedom, the principle of freedom of association, which has long gone in this country, is no longer allowed. You are vilified if you want that. That principle of freedom of association will rush to the surface, and then you will find society separating out, and people will simply say, we don't want all of these invaders in amongst us. We don't have to let them live in amongst us. And you will find that foreign populations will be forced to stew in their own juice, and then conditions in their areas will become intolerable, and then they will be amenable to going. That is not going to happen because of any government policy. That will come about because of government collapse, and which is what I think is unavoidable. But I think it's the best part, almost another decade before that starts to happen. But it is not going to happen. Government are not going to reform us out of this. Government are going to distract us from it. They're doing it, and so far it's working. Thank you.